Greetings, brothers and sisters. So there's a way to stay calm during the what I call the apocalaughs by recognizing what this is, like what this truly is, right? The breakdown, the complete breakdown of our, civilization. you know, that it's, and if you really look at it, if you look at it in a way that's objective, because I've said this before. It's difficult for people to look at this realistically or honestly because our whole lifestyle and everything that we, depend on is tied to this outcome, right? Somehow this thing working out. Somehow our civilization being saved. And so I just want to show you a few little clips here and then talk about how one can just breathe it in and just enjoy what you're, whatever the last throes of our civilization, and understand what you're looking at here. Understand what's really happening, and, find a way to just absorb it in some positive way, because it's inevitable, right? This is the Thanos of our civilization. It's inevitable. And so one of the things I want to point out is that doesn't it seem strange that these issues that come up, like wearing masks, fall along political lines? I mean, I know there's a lot of liberal people, health people who are against masks, but the way that it's portrayed in the media is that the left and, people on CNN, for example, like, Chris Cuomo's had a nurse on the other night. I was going to cover that, but I didn't get time. They were against Texas lifting their mask mandate. And so, it always falls along political lines. Whatever issue we have, you can look at it and know this is how CNN's going to cover it and this is how Fox News is going to cover it. Like, it's very obvious. Every new issue, it's just like, it's like these templates, this template thinking. And you know how social media is going to cover it, and you know what you can say and what you can't say about it, what's going to be restricted and things like this. And so it's just like, so, it's such boilerplate stuff. And deep down, I know they don't really care about it. I know they don't really, or they might feel different about it. Like lots of these people who are pro-mask in public don't really want to wear them, and, they don't want their families to wear them or whatever it is, or there's people who are anti-mask that may really secretly wear them and things and think they work. I mean, it's just boilerplate stuff. And this is one of the reasons why our civilization is breaking down, because, there's always going to be these oppositional attitudes because it's structured that way. Not because of the opposition, because this is what happens when things end. Like a divorce, this is a divorce, right? This is what happens when there's going to be a nasty divorce and there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's, it can't be salvaged. So here, the first one is this. Biden calls states lifting mask mandates Neanderthal thinking. And so I'm in the editing process, and I missed putting in an important point here that I'm going to, expand on in the next segment of this video. But going back to this idea of a nasty divorce, where you get into a situation, it doesn't have to be a divorce, but you're in a breaking of a relationship where you're just so mad, or both people are just so mad at each other that they always take the oppositional view, right? Like they always say, all right, what does he think about it? What does he think about it? Oh, he thinks that? Well, I think the other thing, right? And so you find out where the other person or the other side or the other group, the other demographic is, the left, the right, wherever it is, right? And then you pick the other side. Well, Trump doesn't like masks, well, then I like masks. I'm for him. Biden and Fauci and the Democrats are for masks, so then I'm against them, right? You start just deciding what your opinion is based in what your, opponents or enemies' position is. You just take the opposite, and the people that you associate with, whatever they're thinking or believing, you just agree with them. And then if you understand this in terms of politicians, like Joe Biden's team, his handlers, there's two situations. One, that they were already pro-mask. The people that controlled Joe Biden were already pro-mask before masks even came out, that this was something that was a part of an agenda and he was going to be for it. Or the other thing is that they do polls and they decide, right, and they look at this as a political strategy and they decide, all right, you're going to choose this side. Because politicians oftentimes don't care at all about the issue. They just do what's best for them politically, or what their controllers or handlers tell them what to do. But they're not really pro something. They're not for it. They just say they are. And you can see this with Joe Biden, who is, the mask guy. He's Mr. Mask. And for a guy who's Mr. Mask, he sucks at wearing them. I'll show you that. I mean, it's, this has historically been borne out. He doesn't do it appropriately. He doesn't do it the way that the scientists say you're supposed to do it. And so why get mad, right? Why get mad when you hear Joe Biden talk about masks? Why get mad at these things? Why get emotionally affected? Because it's just, it's just artificial beliefs, superficial beliefs, political beliefs and things that are a part of an explosive dynamic between the left and the right and the truthers and the, sheeple, whatever it is, right? The system, the controllers. Why get emotionally involved or invested? Like, why, how dare you, how offended, I'm so offended, right? Why be so offended all the time? Why are people so offended by other people's beliefs all the time when oftentimes those beliefs are just based in, oh, he believes that, well, I'm going to believe this, right? Most of the time people are, not really thinking through what they believe in. They're just doing it to be part of a group or a club, or because the opposition, because Trump or Biden or the Democrats or the Republicans believe the opposite. So they just say, oh, if he believes that, I'm believing this, right? So why do that? Like, it's just, the system's collapsing, and so why be upset over these petty little things?
Message to Texas and Mississippi. Texas and Mississippi.
I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now.
What he just did there, based on what the CDC says, I'll show you it again. I've showed you this in the past because he does it all the time. Here it is.
Mistake. Look.
That right there is a big problem because the CDC and the WHO were very specific that you only touch your mask by these things right here because your hands have, germs and bacteria on them. And so when you touch your mask by your ghoul hole, which JoJo's always doing. I mean, maybe I'll run these clips. I have a whole bunch of clips about him doing this. He's done it over and over again. He's constantly doing this thing. I'm not going to run the clips. You've seen them probably before. But, this is what he does, right? He touches his, right here is the worst spot because that's where you're going to, breathe in germs and things. And so anybody who's wearing a mask and believes in masks, you have to do it appropriately. There's a way to do it. It said in the WHO that masks have to be clean. They have to be not wet. You have to wash them. You have to put on fresh masks, or it defeats the purpose. And that's not being done. And so if you believe in masks, which he says he does, and he's doing this as an example, right? He's wearing this mask as an example. He's constantly touching it. And when you're touching your mask, that's going to introduce whatever into it, bacteria, possibly COVID, and things like this. And it's very, clear if you go to the WHO. So this is the WHO. How to put on and wear a fabric mask. Before touching the mask, clean your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. Now, JoJo might have done that, which I don't think he did. But, he probably washed his hands at some point. Who knows? But that was a while ago. You understand this? Inspect the mask for tears and holes. Do not use a mask that is damaged. Adjust the mask to cover your mouth, nose, and chin, leaving no gaps on the sides. Place the straps behind your head or ears. Do not cross the straps because this can cause gaps on the side of your face. I'm in the editing process. I just want to jump in here. And, if he's saying what he's going to say in this next segment is that masks are very effective, that everyone should know by now that masks work. But if you're not wearing them effectively, lots of people are wearing masks that have gaps around them, and the masks are dirty and they're not cleaning them, and they're touching them inappropriately. All these things you're about to hear in this list. You think about it, how many people are wearing their masks the way that they say here? Washing them when they're dirty, throwing away old masks, right? Wearing ones that are, there's no gaps and things like this. So for the most part, people are wearing masks more as a show, just to get along, right, than they are wearing them correctly. There are some people who wear them correctly, some people who, follow these instructions, and JoJo isn't one of them. Avoid touching the mask while wearing it. If you touch it, clean your hands. Change your mask if it gets dirty or wet. Clean your hands before taking off the mask. Take off the mask by removing it from your ear loops without touching it in the front of your mask. If your fabric mask is dirty or wet and you plan to reuse it, put it in a clean plastic reusable bag. If you need to use it again, hold the mask at the elastic loops when removing it from the bag. Clean your mask once a day. Clean your hands after removing the mask. And then you have to, clean the fabric mask, right? All these things. But the key here is take off the mask by removing it from the ear loops. And JoJo didn't do that, right? You see he's touching it right there by the goo hole. The worst place to touch it, right? Now he has whatever he has on his hands, and he's going to put that on surfaces. If he had COVID, he's breathing it out. His mask is going to be wet, right? Your mask gets wet and moist because you're breathing out, vapor. You're breathing out liquid. And so this is what you're not supposed to do. He's saying that he believes in masks, but he doesn't believe in doing it the right way, right? Because this is about being sanitary. And you know that people aren't wearing their masks appropriately because doing all those things, it says to wash your hands multiple times, only touch your mask by your ear loops, and don't be glomming onto your goo hole. So he did it once. Let's see if he does it any more times.
I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get.
Boom, again, not wearing it correctly, not being a good example of how to wear a mask. So he says he believes in masks. I mean, that's politically the way things have fallen, right? People who are Republican believe in, don't believe in masks. For the most part, Trumpers or whatever it is, are less likely. Republican states want to open back up and they want to stop wearing masks. That's just what happened in Texas. This is what this is about. And, Democrats and, these Democratic officials in Democratic states are pushing for masks. Why? Why is it that's the breakdown for people? There's so many liberal people that believe in alternative medicine. In fact, I think even more liberal people don't use conventional medicine. They're more apt to use and not believe into the allopathic system. They're more apt to use herbal medicines and alternative medicines. Eat organic foods. And this seems to be like something that liberals, people who go to Whole Foods and things like this, wouldn't want to do. And yet they are doing it, or at least they're being grouped into the demographic saying that this is, how you feel about it, right? Like why is it falling along political lines? It's a very odd thing.
Vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters. I carry a card with me, I don't have it, I put it on my desk. As of yesterday.
Boom, 3 times he's touched his mask, right? In a way that you're not supposed to do. So here is the CDC, right? Wash your hands or use hand sanitizer before putting on your mask. Put the mask over your nose and mouth and secure it under your chin. If you have to continually adjust your mask, it doesn't fit properly, and you might need to find a different mask or type or brand. And here are the don'ts. Don't touch the mask, and if you do, wash your hands or use hand sanitizer. So clearly it shows don't touch the mask. If you're constantly adjusting it, they're saying it doesn't fit. Get a new mask. JoJo adjusts his mask more than anybody I've seen. He doesn't like wearing a mask, right? He is fighting against the mask constantly. And he's touching his mask when he's giving speeches multiple times, and he's not washing his hands. So he's doing two things that are blatantly wrong by both the CDC and the WHO. So he says he's pro-mask, but he's not pro-mask in the sense that he's wearing it correctly. Again, there's a political position he has to take, right? This is all just politics and political theater, right? This is just where they say things, the Republicans say things that they think their supporters are there. An issue is broken up into various demographics of people. Okay, you guys are all going to be pro-mask. You guys are all going to be against masks. That's how it is. Well, why is that? Why is it such a clear divisive line between different demographics and different parties and things when, maybe there's some Democrats who are going to be anti-mask and there's going to be Republicans that are pro-mask, right? Why does it have to always break down along these demographics? When an issue comes out, you know which side you're supposed to be on based in your political leanings. Like every time there was an issue, you knew Trump was going to go this way and Biden was going to go the other way. That's a sign of bad things, where in a relationship of some sort, a friendship or a marriage, or especially a marriage, when there's an issue and you know that you're going to go on one side and your spouse is going to go on the other, then your relationship's over. Like every big issue, and that's what's happening in America, right? Not because of the division, because of other factors of America crumbling, right? Something needs to end.
We have lost 511,874 Americans. We're going to lose thousands more. This will not occur. We'll not have everybody vaccinated until sometime in the summer. We have the vaccine to do it. Getting a shot in someone's arm and getting a second shot, you're going to take time. And it's critical that they follow the science. Wash your hands, hot water, do it frequently, wear a mask, and stay socially distanced.
He was just saying follow the science, but the science of the CDC and the WHO is at 4 or 5, I lost count. The CDC and the WHO said this is a don't. This is a scientific don't. And I've seen JoJo do this on every time he wears a mask in public. He does this all the time. He touches his mask right here above where it's going to be wettest, right? You're speaking, you're breathing out vapor. I mean, that's the whole idea behind a mask. It's catching vapor and droplets and things like this, so it doesn't go out into the atmosphere, and yet he has it on his hands, right? And he just said, wash your hands. Well, yeah, and you're touching your ghoul hole all the time. And so he says he's pro-mask, but his behavior, his actions show you something else, because he's obviously fighting this mask like a little kid, right? He can't, this is a 1 minute and 29 second talk, and he touched his mask 4 times, right? Or 5, I don't know. Like I said, I lost count. Jimmy Kimmel gives QAnon Q-Nuts a new prophecy that's bound to come true.
On March 4th, Trump will be reinstated as president.
Oof, I'm about to enlighten you. Are you ready?
Then the real president, President Trump, can be inaugurated.
QAnon followers are at it again.
Yeah, they are. One of the fundamental problems with human beings right now, and QAnons are, QBs, what he calls Q-Nuts here, are the worst of the worst, is that even when you're proven wrong, you don't have the ability to switch. And this can be said for people in the mainstream over and over again. You have these organizations that have been wrong time and time again. Governmental organizations, scientific organizations, religious organizations that have proven to be wrong. Politicians, and they just get it wrong constantly, and people just come back for more. And the QBs are the worst, like I've ever seen at this. This anonymous shill, this anonymous whatever he is, this Q, is constantly wrong, and then the QBs are constantly wrong on top of it. The QBs in their, QB decoder rings, right? they get out of cereal boxes and they decode these Q messages, these Q drops, right? They are, they're almost always blatantly, crazily wrong, and this they keep on re-upping. Trump is not going to win this election. And yet, here they are. It's March 4th, and here we go, right?
Not able to let go of the conspiracies that have proven false time and time again. Now, they have grasped onto another impossible theory.
Trump will take office as the 19th president of the United States on March 4th.
They believe in an old inauguration date in place before the passage of the 20th Amendment. It changed from March.
The thing that's fascinating about the Q movement is, and this is, people all do this a little bit, but they do it on steroids. So they come in really hard. Like, this is going to happen. We're sure of it. This is no doubt about it. And you'll be sorry, this video isn't going to age well. I mean, I've heard these things over and over again myself, right? Yeah, we're going to see this happen. There's no doubt in them. There's no, they don't have any, it's 100% this is going to happen. And then it doesn't. But they already have a fallback, even though they came in so strong on the first thing. Like, they came on so strong about the election and January 6th, and before that, all the unsealed indictments and all these things. And so they come in strong, and then they don't happen. And then they have a fall-away position. No, it's not this date, it's this date. Well, it wasn't this, it's this. And they constantly reinvent, right, move the goalposts in ways that's fascinating for somebody who's interested in human psychology. Like, they just never will be like, all right, you're listening to an anonymous shill. You don't know who it is. And the guy, is claiming grandiose things that none of those things have come true. And at some point, you got to say, yeah, I got duped. They got me, right? And everything that you're doing is being used against the, so-called truth community and everyone else. It's actually backfiring. What you're doing is damage. You're actually being mocked and laughed at. So let's go here to Jimmy Kimmel's.
Says tomorrow is the day Donald Trump will return to the White House triumphantly. March 4th is the date on which they used to inaugurate presidents 100 years ago. And the theory some of these Q nuts are spreading is that tomorrow will be some kind of reawakening. Emperor Palpatine hands will strike back tomorrow, just like he was supposed to on January 6th. How many more?
See, you're like, you're on the wrong side of things if Jimmy Kimmel can rip you and be right. Like, that's the problem with QBs. This is a problem with all of it, right? That there's so much with the mainstream, with CNN and Jimmy Kimmel's and things, where you can just, rip their logic, and, they're always wrong as well. I mean, Hollywood. And so when Hollywood's able to tear you apart, you're going in the wrong direction, right? When this, hack of a comedian, not even, he's not even a real comedian, is able to just destroy your logic here, you QBs, you're going in the wrong direction.
How many more times are these people going to prepare for a victory that doesn't come? I don't know who Q is, but he's definitely a Clippers fan. Donald Trump, make no mistake, and I'll bet anything on it, will not be in the White House tomorrow. He'll be.
And so that's just a couple examples, right? The gap between the various demographics, the two-party system, the left-right paradigm. And so, to offer some insight into this beyond what people react, because people are programmed to react if you're on the left or you're on the right, or if you're a truther, or if you're a sheeple, or whatever it is. I mean, think about that. There's an issue, and within, just a moment of analysis, you can pretty accurately predict what all these various demographics, there's people who don't care, right? They're, whatever it is. You have all these various people and their mindsets, and you know what their position's going to be. I mean, that's, should be scary, that there'll be an issue, and, how these various levels of society are going to break on all these different issues, what their opinion's going to be, how the media is going to cover it, and how the people are going to react to it. time and time again. And so think about that. Like, that's beyond your point of view. That's beyond you thinking you have critical thinking skills, that the system, a controlling system, can put out an issue and know how it's going to be framed within the minds. I mean, we know how it's going to be framed by the media, but we also know how it's going to be framed by the people in terms of their own personal lens, their subjective personal lenses, and they're going to react this way. You know, the emotions that they're going to have, right? I mean, mostly it's going to be anger and, some fear and things like this. And the reason is because it's ending. Our society is ending. There's so many factors and, things that you can see that are indicators that our society, our civilization is collapsing. And the first one is people just don't get along anymore. Like, there's just, and this is a structural thing. The people that control the system have structured these various divisions that are there, these fissures that we're sitting there waiting for. And they do this all the time. But it's also a part of, divine will, right? There's a time when your relationships, your life, you have a car maybe you have a car, you've experienced an old car that you really are attached to, and you didn't have, the money to buy a new car, and you just didn't want to buy a new car, and the car breaks down and you get it fixed. And then something else breaks. And then something else breaks. And before you know it, you're, putting enough money into the car that you could have bought a new car, right? Every system in the car is breaking down. First it's, something to do with the engine, then it's something to do with transmission, then it's the electrical system, and it's just one thing after another, and you realize that the car's just done, right? It's over. Like, it's a systemic problem within the car. It's in one region, is in one area, and that, you would have been better off saving your money and putting it into a new car where you wouldn't have constant problems. And so you have this with relationships where there's such a division, and I've said this before, something I recognized in my own, personal divorce. When you and your ex reality, like you watch a movie together and, or there's an event, there's an experience you go through, and you tell the story of what you experienced. You talk, what your story of the experience. And your ex tells, or your partner tells their story, their interpretation of the event. And you realize it's such a gap. There's such a schism between you and the other person. And you're like, did we watch the same movie? Like, it was the same experience, but your memory of it, especially when, memories of past things that happened a year ago, and then you hear the two sides of the story, and you're like, is this the same? Were you guys actually in the same room? And so that's what's happening right now. When there's an event, when there's something that happens, it's so vastly different. It's such a schism between, one group's version of the event, their subjective version of reality, and they're opposing, and the various other groups, their oppositional version of the event, version of reality is so skewed that there's no fixing it, right? When the fabric of reality is being questioned on a moment-to-moment basis in terms of people's interpretations of what's happening around them and their subjective points of view. And people are changing their realities all the time because their point of view, they fall in with one demographic or another, and now their version of what they saw and what they experienced is so vastly different from the way they saw things a year ago or 2 years ago or 6 months ago or whatever it is, right? And so that is a sign of, when people can't agree on a shared reality. And so if you're looking at saying, all right, we have to solve this problem, there's all these politicians, we got to bring people together. We got to, that's what Biden campaigned on, ridiculously so, because it can't happen. Because that means that people have to reverse what's inside of them, their version of reality, and these demographics and things that they've been broken, these groups that they've been broken into. And somebody's got to admit that they saw it wrong. I mean, everybody has to admit it. Yeah, we all are subjective, and everyone's got to, I mean, think about that happening, where the Democrats and the media and everybody, individual people will be like, yeah, I think I'm not completely right about this. I think you might be more right. They're all like, this would never happen. Like, that's what would have to happen for us to work together to solve the problem. But even if that happened, see, this is, one of the indicators, one of the key indicators of an apocalaughs, something where your civilization is collapsing and your culture is collapsing. Because even if that happened, right, even if people weren't fighting with each other, even if the Democrats and Republicans weren't at each other's throats, even if, the sheeple and the truthers, all these various oppositional groups could find common ground, the civilization would still collapse, because it's not anything to do with people not getting along. People not getting along is huge. Like, and this used to happen in the Heartfulness meditation. I was talking to this, older practitioner of the system, and he was around Master Chargy, the third master of the system. And he said that, Master Chargy always gets bummed when people are fighting or arguing within the Heartfulness system, within the Heartfulness mission, right? And Master Chargy used to always say, when there is, conflict, all the work stops. You can see this at at your job and with your family. When there's division and conflict and, negativity, production goes way down and everything falls apart. So that's, a bad sign. That's a sign of a company that's collapsing, or a country that's collapsing, or a world that's collapsing, when there's conflict and division and things like this. Think about war. Everything goes into the war, right? Back in World War II, all these, manufacturing, these economic companies and things like this started to produce weapons. They started to, switch over to do things to fight the war. All the energy goes into the conflict and winning war. Everything else gets put on hold. Like, war is something where everyone's supposed to knuckle under and suffer, do whatever they can do to make sure that they contribute in some way to beating the other side. And so when you have an internal war, a civil war, whatever that means, right? We have a civil war right now, a cultural war, war of demographics. It's the same thing. Like, that's, everyone's focused on beating the other side, proving the other side is wrong, watching the other side get their just desserts, right? Their comeuppance. That's how people feel. And they're not at all working together to make sure the country is going in the right direction. But even if they were, even if people could come together and put aside their beliefs, the difference in their beliefs and all these things, and work together with their enemies in a cohesive manner, the country would still collapse. Because this is a symptom. This is, these fissures that were put into our culture, that when our country started to collapse, people would blame it on each other instead of blaming the people who ran the system, right? That when the system would break down, then there would be these fighting between these demographics. And so here are I'm going to say 5 off the top of my head, but it might be more. Here are the 5 major, elements to show that our civilization is on the verge of collapsing. It's, in the collapsing phase, and it has to collapse. So the first one is always to do with God, right? Is always to do with divinity. And there are things going on with our civilization, the breakup of the family, and these things I'm going to cover separately, the disconnection between, people and God, and in terms of, our religions failing, religions acting as a middleman between you and God, disconnecting you from God, and using your spiritual desires to benefit the religion itself, right? To prop up the religion, give the religion power, give the religion money, and things like this. And so when people are disconnected from God, they're disconnected from nature, and they're going in the wrong direction spiritually, then the system immediately starts to collapse, right? When a system takes people away from their spiritual purpose, from their soul's purpose, then the system immediately no longer serves the divine purpose. The system has become an aberration. The same thing with an individual human being that becomes selfish and cancerous on, the divine system, because your ego has grown too big and all these things. Not just grown too big, you're going in the opposite direction. You've become a demon. You're working against the divine order, the divine will, right? And that's what's happening across the board, individually and collectively. And there's contingencies, right? There are systems, like you have an immune system, which attacks pathogens, it attacks bad things. There's natural ways that, there's ways that nature, the divine system, will get rid of things that are cancerous, right? And they'll be excised out. It just takes a period of time, whatever time. Maybe the cancer serves a purpose for, sometimes evil serves a purpose or whatever it is. But inevitably it is excised out because it is something that is against the collective good, against the, harmony, the divine harmony, against what you're supposed to be doing, the purpose of your life, of your spiritual existence, of your soul's existence. And if you look around at what's going on in society, you just go to any comment section on the internet, you go to any of these, whatever it is. You just look at the political discourse, you look at everything that's going on in the world, and you can see we're going in the wrong direction in terms of human beings. Like, human beings are weaker, they're crazier, and they're more broken. And the brokenness is being celebrated. That our society is saying people who are broken, that's good. That's, oh, you're broken? That's, that's a badge of honor. We got to give love and support to the broken people. Let's support people who are broken. The family's breaking down. I mean, there's just all of it. Like, we just look around at society. I mean, some of these indicators are, think about how much time the average person spends on the internet, in a cyber reality, in an alternative reality. Because when you have a cyber life, right, you have a social life, you have, avatars you use in video games or whatever it might be. People have an alternative life where they have social interactions and you purchase things. I mean, all these things that you do on the internet where you exist inside various, devices and servers and things like this, computers and phones and whatever it is, right? You have a, some sort of an interface. The heart, in terms of the heartfulness meditation, is an interface device between you and God. On an etheric level, of course, you have a physical heart, right? You have a, your heart pumps blood through your body and it does all these other physical functions. There's a rhythm, electromagnetic energy in your heart, all this stuff. There's rhythmic aspects to your heart that keeps you, in the flow of things. And so there's your physical heart. Then there is your etheric heart, which is where your soul exists. Your soul resides in your heart. That's where everybody's starting point is in terms of the existence of their soul. And your soul, as it moves through the various regions, it still remains in your heart as well, right? As your soul goes on its spiritual yatra through these various spiritual points and regions in the heartfulness meditation system, there is still an element of your heart that always exists, an element of your soul that exists in your heart, right? The Atman. The original name of the soul was the Atman. So your heart and your soul are always connected. And then it's also where you experience God. It's where you feel love, right? So it's the center of love, and that's how God communicates. God communicates through love. And so you have this essence inside of you, and your heart is this mechanism, this spiritual mechanism, a gateway to contacting your soul, the etheric side of yourself, and also God. And so in the same way, now you have these interface devices, in a different way, but the same idea, where you have phones and computers and whatever it is, iPads, that are interface devices between you and another realm of existence. So your heart is the interface device between you and the spiritual realm of existence. And then you have these interface devices that bring you into the cyber universes. And there's so much now in the cyber universes. There's worlds that are created in terms of, video games and fantasy games, whatever it might be. I mean, think about all the things that exist now in the cyber universe, where people have romantic relationships where they never meet in person. Like, think about that. Like, how does that affect you as a person, not having, it's like your body doesn't exist nearly as much as it used to, your physical reality. And there's people who think this is evolution, that we're all supposed to evolve into some sort of cyber reality where we're going to be chipped up and have various types of technology in our bodies, nanobots and whatever have you, and we're going to plug in deeper and deeper into the cyber reality to such an extent our consciousness can be uploaded, right? Transhumanism, this singularity, idea of singularity. And so this is being pushed. It's a big part of the culture that this is evolution, that at some point we were supposed to merge with machines, technology, and this is natural life, that our bodies are going to wither away, our souls, our connection to God doesn't really exist. It's all science, it's all physical matter. And so instead of working on developing our hearts, working and being a good person in the real world, or whatever it is, being a spiritual being in the real world, that at some point we're going to shed our bodies and just convert over to being technological. I mean, this is actually something that's being pushed by many people with power and money and influence. They believe this is the evolutionary step, the next evolutionary step, where we are given upgrades in one way or another, so we become superhuman in the sense that technology makes us better than we were before, in their version of better. But we were given a body for a reason. I mean, yeah, technology is a part of that. Like, we have minds, and technology is something that was inevitable. It's happened before here and other places. Technology is there. Our instruments, our tools, yes. These can be, these things are a part of the divine system. We have the capabilities. We're given the God-given abilities to create these things. So sure, yeah, they're not, necessarily an aberration or a mistake, but we're not mature enough to handle them. And they're taking us away from what it is to be a natural human being. And you can see this. People are getting worse. Like, people, in terms of their behavior, is getting worse. And they are, and how do they behave in their cyber universe? When people are anonymous. I mean, go back to this idea of Q anonymous, right? How are these QBs behaving when they're, when there's anonymity, right? Well, how do people behave when they have this, secretive life where they can expose parts of themselves on the internet safely, things they wouldn't do in public, things they wouldn't do in terms of interacting with other people. They'll say things they would never say to other people, to their faces and things, especially in like some public setting. And so, their behaviors are going down, right? It isn't like you're living some better version of yourself on the internet. People are, saints on the internet, and they're, horrible people in real life. For the most part, people are way worse on the internet than they are in real life. They let their dark side flourish on the internet. I mean, think about all that. So this is, a sign of where we're going isn't okay. Like, it isn't okay in terms of our souls. It isn't okay in terms of the way we were designed. It isn't okay with God and the divine laws. And so we're heading in the wrong direction. But another indicator is what we're doing is not sustainable. Our life isn't sustainable in any way. First of all, our debt-based economic system, which powers all of this, deviance, isn't sustainable because it's not real, right? Our wealth is debt. And I've explained this over and over again. I'm not going to go through it here. You can check out any of my number of videos on the economy, or other people have talked about this. Debt is wealth, money is debt. There's these money is debt movies out there, part 1 and 2, cartoons. And so it's understandable. I mean, it's easy for people to learn that our money is debt. And that is a negative. It's demonic. It goes against the true, aspect of a healthy economy. And so it's powered by debt, but it's also powered by desire. It's powered by people's impulse purchases and being totally focused on the material world. Shopping constantly, right? All these things, which is weakening people. It's making them superficial. It makes them focus on their external, the peripheral, right? The peripheral part of them, what they look like, what kind of, all these things, right? Just superficial, what kind of car you drive, what kind of clothes you wear, right? All these, you're a brand. You're defined by your stuff, and then hoarding and all the things that go with it. So that's not sustainable. Our energy system, fossil fuels, is not sustainable. Electromagnetic poisoning that comes with electricity and Wi-Fi and all these things that are wearing on people, making people go in the wrong direction that way, right? In terms of being negatively affected, their subtle bodies, your spiritual essence is negatively affected. Electricity is a bad thing, and that's not sustainable. Nuclear power plants aren't sustainable, and all these ways that we generate electricity, that's not sustainable either. And so that's where our wealth is stored on the, on the internet, on the, various platforms and servers and things like this. Our wealth is now all cyber as well. People have cyber money, not even physical money. Physical money has no value. Cyber money is even less real because it doesn't even exist in the physical world, right? It exists in computers somewhere. So if you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage that's unsustainable, that you can't provide, that you're living on your credit cards in a debt-based system, and you're constantly not having the financial resources to exist. I mean, they say that the number one thing that couples argue over is money. So when there's a debt-based system and there's not enough resources, I mean, in fact, it's there's no resources because it's debt. But in terms of the collapsing economic system, there's not enough money to go around. There's not enough imaginary wealth to go around to take care of all the people in the world, 8 billion people, and take care of people, certainly in America, you see this happening. And so it's not sustainable. This is one of the reasons that there's fighting, because of the various ways that certain demographics are expecting more and other demographics are getting a new deal. Everyone's getting a new deal, but the people with more are being brought down farther in terms of their lifestyle and things like this. That's the reason people are infighting, right? That's why you have these, it's just like with children. Some people are getting more, some people are getting less, everyone's complaining. And instead of blaming the parents, the kids are at each other's throats. And so this is another way that the conflict is there as a symptom of a system that's collapsing, that's imploding. And so there's multiple other reasons, right, of ways that we're going in the wrong direction, that it has to, God has to intervene, or at least it's part of a plan. And now we have, there's a reason why you don't live for eternity, because you could, right? You have planned obsolescence in your body. And people in different yugas and different times in the Vedic age used to live for thousands of years. But even then, the end of things, phases and seasons and things like this are built into the system, all of these systems, not just the physical world, but all of it, right? Because you have to keep on moving, you keep on changing, you have to, be pushed to go to the next level. And so that's why you don't live forever. That's why this system isn't, people think, oh, America is so great. Yeah, right. It's short-lived. A Twinkie has a shelf life of 20 years, but it's still, at some point, it breaks down. Even plastics, if they say, all right, it takes 10,000 years for plastics to be, to break down into the environment, but eventually it does. Depleted uranium is 4 billion years for it to be, to lose its radioactive half-life. But everything breaks down inevitably. The sun, the earth, all these planets, the universe itself. Everything has built in an ending to it. Everything ends at some point. And there's a reason for that. You just, you don't keep on going forever in the same direction. You have to change. It forces you to change. It forces you to adapt. It forces you to evolve, because things aren't supposed to be stagnant. And so you see this in our culture and our civilization right now. We're going through a changing period. And so to focus in, like if you were looking at the Joe Biden being an anti-masker, if you just look at anything or anybody, Trump or Biden, whoever you are, whoever you're mad at, whoever you disagree with, and you get triggered emotionally, like it's senseless, right? This is why I keep on saying. Because nothing's going to change the outcome, right? There's no side is going to win this thing, right? This isn't going to be something, there's going to be short-lived victories, whatever that means, right? But, look at the left right now. After finally getting rid of Trump, they're miserable. They're even more miserable, and they're turning on each other. And so this idea that something can change in the material world to create some, get rid of the dissatisfaction that everybody feels. Everyone's dissatisfied because the system sucks. The system doesn't make people happy. even with all of our material benefits, all of our, wonderful luxuries and things that we can do, our ability to travel. I mean, there's so many great things in our system in terms of the user end of it, right? The ability for us to, explore our material world, so much information at our fingertips, so many ways that we have free time and we can use it for good things. But for the most part, people use their free time to dive into the cesspit. There is incredible loving and spiritual experiences that are there for anybody who does the heartfulness meditation. The heartfulness meditation has been around for over 100 years, predominantly in India, but it's been available to the world since 1970. Pretty much every continent, every country has heartfulness there in it somewhere. There's trainers and so forth, maybe a meditation center, an ashram, or you go over people's house, and you can experience the transmission, this divine energy that comes directly from the source, which is something new that hasn't been tried on planet Earth before. And it has, the experiences that I have had, the deep spiritual experiences. And it's not just about experiences, but they're there, right? Positive experiences and so many other things. They're there and available to people. People can meditate. It helps in navigating your life. There's all these benefits to it, right? And now it's available on the internet, and there are people like me, I guess, prominently me in terms of the, America and the whatever it is, right? But there are people who are talking about it, and I leave links in my description box, and it's easy for people to avail themselves of free services. Doesn't cost you anything, and you can do the practice, even if you do the practice exactly the way they want you to do it, in terms of an hour of meditation in the morning, a half hour cleaning at night. You meditate on, divine light, God's love in your heart for an hour in the morning. And then you do cleaning where you clean out all the day's impressions, which is very, it makes you feel better. I mean, at least for me, most people, it makes them feel better. And then you do 10 minutes of prayer before going to bed. At 9 p.m., you pray for 15 minutes that everyone in the world is, faith and love is growing stronger in them, and the world's being enveloped by love and peace, right? Which has just been added. So for 15 minutes, you do that. So for under 2 hours a day, right, you can have this divine, people used to meditate 18 hours a day. That's all they did. And they didn't get what they're getting here, right? This wasn't available. And there's been these, monks and spiritual aspirants and sannyasis and all these people who have, meditated and prayed for hours upon hours, reflected on God, and they didn't get any of this, right? They didn't get because there was no transmission. And so, what you're getting now in terms of, you can have a modern day life. You don't have to go off into the mountains or the woods or something and run away from society. And it's available to people. And, there's people who've been doing this for 20 years and they quit. They love it. They spend, money and time going to India and, being at the ashrams, and they read all the books and they dedicate themselves to it. And then, something happens and, whatever, they get mad about something or another and they quit. Or there's people who try it and they benefit and they go, wow, this is pretty good. It's actually working for me. And they quit anyway, right? And then they dive into just crappy material life. They just get focused on the cesspit. People are so attracted to the drama. Think about all these dramatic shows. They're just filled with angst. Think about all the violence and all the, think about just the pornography. 1/3 of the internet's pornography. Think about, all the stuff that's out there that's just of a lower nature, low vibration, low consciousness. Watching the news, politics is so lowbrow. Celebrity culture, all of it. And that's what people spend most of their free time doing. And so it's there for people. There is a solution. The reason for the heartfulness system is, a solution to the problems of the modern human being. And you can dive into your internal universe, go inward, and it's just this expansive, the exploration of one's internal world through meditation and, rumination and reflection and all these things. And thinking about God and thinking about the workings of God and the divinity that's not just within us, but within everything and everybody. You can see God all around you. And so this is available, and very few people are interested in it. Even people who are, claim to be, have some sort of proclivity to being a spiritual person, still, They're more obsessed with drama and dirt and these things. And so it's a sign of a failed species, right? People want to be upset. Why are you upset at Joe Biden? Like, why would you ever get mad at Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Why would you get mad at them? Like, how are they really affecting you in a way? I mean, what have they done that's really, you have people in your life that have done more damage to you personally, have done things to you. Of course, these leaders make decisions that affect us all negatively, but are they really making the decisions? You think anybody would let Joe Biden make decisions, right? You think the reason why they got rid of Trump is he wanted to make some of his own decisions? I mean, just think about this, right? But even the people who control the system, like, why get mad at them, right? This is, a system that is, wonderful in so many ways. If you are disciplined, if you are, spiritual in nature, that you don't get sucked into it. If you don't lose touch with God and your soul and your purpose here on planet Earth, you continue to, evolve spiritually and become a better person. You work on your character and you're reflective. You don't spend all your time on the internet. You don't spend all your time indulging in the, many pleasures of our system. If you have some sort of balance between your spiritual essence and your material life, there's a wonderful system. I mean, it's so many ways. I mean, again, it's illusionary because of the debt-based aspect of it. It's short-lived. But for this short period of time, when we're all living on this, global trillion-dollar, quadrillion-dollar credit card, right? Like you have, your credit card rich. You get a credit card with no limit, and you're able to go live high on the hog during that period of time. And if you balance that with a spiritual life, you take advantage of your free time, you take advantage of all the positive things, not dwelling on the negative and what you don't have and how bad it is and how ashamed everyone else should be and how, upset you are and, all these things that you want to protest, things that are offending you. I'm so offended all the time. I'm offended. It offended me. I'm offended. I'm offended by that. How dare you, sir? How dare you, right? All this stuff, right? You're just focused on, being grateful, realizing there's an order to things, there's a plan, and we have this period of time where, we have good material lives, and that you use those material lives to help your spiritual evolution, right? Use the free time to spend time thinking about God and not thinking about the devil. I mean, when you're thinking about Trump, you're thinking about Joe Biden, you're thinking about all these people, you're thinking about the devil. You're thinking about material life. You're thinking about egos, right? You're thinking about all the negative stuff. You're thinking about all the stuff that's away from God. But if you're penetrating to the essence of all things, you can see God in anything, right? You can see God everywhere and in everybody. God exists in one way or another. The potential to be a divine person, to be a saint, to be somebody who has, become divinized, because every person has the ability to become divinized, not in some egotistical way. Oh, I'm such a saint, I'm such a spiritual person. No, not like that. But in terms of embracing your higher nature. You have a lower nature and a higher nature. I think everybody can see this. You can see higher nature and lower nature in everybody. Even the worst people, they have their moments of divinity. They have their moments where God works through them. They have their moments where love passes through them. You have these, oftentimes you'll know somebody and they're just about to do it, right? They're just, they're starting to be more loving. They're starting to be a better person. They're just about to turn the corner and something happens and they go hit the bottle again, or they go to the racetrack, or they do whatever, right? And they just, they were going to do it. They were, turning to a positive way, and then something goes south, or just something in them, some dissatisfaction in them. They're bored or whatever it is, and they go to the dark side again. And I think, this is the problem with human beings. It is a, tendency to go to the lower. And that's what's happening right now. We have, human beings are going to the lower, but the higher is right there. And so, it's a choice point where people are going to say, all right, we're going to leave our lower nature behind, not in the sense that whatever you have to take with you, some part of it, right, whatever it might be, but that's, not going to dominate. Your lower nature isn't going to dominate. And right now, for most people, that's what's happening. It's low vibration. And the system which is, about embracing people embracing their lower nature, the system cultivates you to think of the lower. and to disconnect from God and disconnect from, and even deny that they exist. And that's what's happening right now. And, it doesn't have to happen, but it is, right? And the system is an anomaly. The system is something that, given the Kali Yuga, given the time period in our history, this was something that, this debt-based economic system and this hedonistic, materialistic system, it was just the right time, the stars aligned for this system to go in the direction it's going. But it's a short-lived thing. Eventually we'll have a better, more pure system that's based in our divine nature, and this system will be a, distant memory. And so for all of us to, not to get sucked into caring about it, right? It's time is up, right? It's time is, the people who control the system, people I call the controllers, their time is up. Their time of, being in control of this planet, lasted, I don't know, you say 5,000 years or whatever it is at the most, and then it's something else. Then, things will go back to a more natural order of things. And so, why not just, laugh at it, just, be light about it. I talk about this over and over again, and not get sucked into these, these prescribed fissures, these fractures, these, points of conflict between people to keep everyone divided, keep people at each other's throats, to not recognizing the big picture, what's really important here. It's just to keep you engaged without having you vent your anger and your hostility and your outrage at the people that control the system, but at other people that you think are getting a better deal than you and who are at fault, even though they have no more power than you do to fix or create or do anything in terms of changing the system. They don't control anything. They're not in charge of anything, but yet they're the people you're blaming for bringing down the system. I'm saying, like, if you're a Republican looking at the Democrats, or if you're a Democrat or liberal looking at conservative, or if you're a QB looking at, what you consider the elite, right? Whatever it is. I mean, they're not, there's something bigger at play here. And if you just step back and breathe it in and look at it and go, yeah, it's just sort of like a game. It's like you're stuck in some Monopoly game, but you're taking it seriously because, you've lost touch with reality. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.